My biggest fear would be when the first comes and I don't get the rent.
I found that my tenant had dumped concrete down my toilet. Can you believe Fair Housing fined me $5,000 for that?
How do you onboard your tenants? What do you do?
I don't even know if I do it right.
If you're a landlord, don't just rent, rent perfect. The Rent Perfect podcast with property expert and private investigator, David Pickron.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Rent Perfect podcast. I'm really excited today because today I really have a good friend that is joining me today in the podcast. Derek Cook, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, David.
Derek, it's always fun to have a friend, a long-term friend that is on air with you because it's just so much easier and it just flows so naturally as just being friends. And you've done a lot in your life and you're a serial entrepreneur, which I really appreciate. I kind of feel I'm that way too. And I think we have a ton in common. Today, we're really going to help people who are going to get into the investing industry for maybe the first time or second time, and we're going to help them not make a bunch of mistakes. But before we kind of really get into the meat of our podcast, and it's going to be a lot of fun today, I want to talk a little bit about just what have you done in your life and what you've done. And so our listeners, our viewers on YouTube can kind of understand who you are, where you're coming from, because you've gone from like A to Z, man. Like, you know a ton.
Yeah, so one thing I grew up with was my mother actually always said, hey, if you want to, you need to be your own boss.
Right.
And her dad was. And so from the get-go, that kind of was always my mentality whenever I went into anything. So
don't work for the man, right?
Right. So, I got into finance pretty early, into mortgage finance specifically, and I enjoyed it. I made a lot of money when I was young. I created my own company, built my own mortgage company. Had that for over a decade. Took it right up to the crash. A few months into the crash, and then hated writing checks to everybody and not making money. So
it all stopped.
Right
then. Exactly.
But I've been in real estate for over 20 years. And that's really been my my backbone.
Right.
That's helped me do all the other things that I've done. So
right.
Restaurant entrepreneur, cars. I love cars.
Yeah.
I race cars. And so I had a few car lots over the years. I lend out hard money still, so I still do that. And then if I'm always looking at how can I make this real estate better for everybody. So
right now in your career, you're in your 40s, and you're mainly spending most of your time on what?
Real estate.
On real estate.
100%. Flipping specifically and lending.
Okay, perfect. And you also right now currently are franchisees of?
Right. So I purchased a franchise from Homevestors of America. A lot of people know us from the We Buy Ugly Houses company.
We Buy Ugly Houses. Great branding.
Right.
Okay.
We spent a lot.
We buy ugly houses. We make them pretty.
Right.
And we make money in between.
Amen. Okay.
Perfect. I love that. Well, my son now is kind of just getting into investing, and I'm trying to teach him, what do you look for when you're out looking at property? And today we want to specifically talk about the physical part of the property, things that can get you in trouble. And so really I wanted to bring you on as an expert to really talk about, what do you look at when you walk into the front? I mean, maybe even before the front door, when you pull up on the street in your car, right? Tell me the 5 things that come across your mind first. What are the first 5 things you look at on a home?
Sure. And I just want to qualify too. So I believe a lot of your listeners are probably landlords or want to be landlords, maybe not flipping, but this topic of 5 things that are detrimental before you make that buy, go both sides, right? Whether you're going to hold it and rent it, or whether you're going to flip the property. So
because you can't be a landlord without buying a property,
right?
And you can't make much money flipping if you don't buy the property. So this is just relevant for every single listener out there, and that's what I love about this topic.
Right. So you're right, and it starts when you pull up to the property. Before you get out of your car, you're looking at the roof.
Okay.
Right? That's the easiest way. You step back, you're kind of checking that out. But there's 5 things. So your roof, the foundation of the property, you're going to check out the electrical, plumbing, and your AC. Those things are all big dollar items that give you really almost zero value when you go to sell it. Or if it's going to break in the next 2 years while you're owning it, that's going to suck all your profit out of your rental, right? So right off the bat, before you go inside, you're looking at the roof. You're looking for eaves, rot on the eaves. You're looking underneath, on the fascia, any type of rot, any type of moisture penetration, those types of things.
Let me step back for a second, because we're going to go into roofs here. But let me step just to make sure to clarify really what you just said. And that is this. If I go buy a home and they say, hey, listen, the air conditioner doesn't work, I'm going to want money off the home, right? It's going to kill the value.
Right.
But if I come into a home and you say, hey, this home's $225,000 and the air conditioning works, I'm going to say, okay, I expect that. Like, I'm not going to pay $230 because the air conditioning works. So when you talk about these 5 items not adding additional value, I think what you're saying is everyone expects the electrical to work. Everybody expects plumbing and AC. That's not going to, it's not like, hey, we put wood floors in this to raise the value.
Right.
We remodeled the bathroom and the kitchen. That raises the value. Your roof, your air conditioning, electrical, your plumbing, and your foundation are all expected to already be done. They don't raise the value. So if you purchase a home and you don't properly look at these things, it's money out of your pocket. So didn't mean to interrupt you on the roof part, but I just want to make sure I clarified, guys, this stuff works against you, but it certainly doesn't work for you when you are purchasing a flip or a long-term hold or any kind of property. So sorry, let's go back to roofs. You're looking at eaves.
No, that's 100% correct. So that's good clarification. But yeah, so you're looking at the eaves, a roof, depending on the size of the property, you're spending, if you're lucky, $5,000. If not, I've spent over $30,000.
I was gonna say, you're getting a new roof for $5,000. You've got some good friends out there.
Yeah,
you
I do.
Some good friends out there,
I do quite a few properties. But yeah, so, but that is a zero. People are like, oh, that's great, that's awesome, it's got a new roof. I'll give you $225. That's what you're asking.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
So same thing with the AC units. I love it. I think it's funny. I laugh at it. I shouldn't say I love it. I laugh at it when a seller says, oh yeah, the AC unit's 18 years old, but man, it is so cold. It blows so cold.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, that could die tomorrow. It could die the next 60 seconds and cost me $8,000 tomorrow.
It's kind of like my heart beats until it doesn't.
Right.
I mean, okay, great. That doesn't guarantee anything.
Right. So, I mean, those things on your purchase, when you go in, you want to make sure you have those. How old is that AC unit? The plumbing, I buy a lot of
Let me stop you back at AC. I'm sorry, because I really want to cover each individual topic. Is how do I know? Like, so I can find out, okay, property is built in 1980, right? But how do I know? What do I look at on that AC unit? Is there a date usually of a manufacturing date or something on there that I can look at?
Every unit is different, but there is stamps on them. Okay. Some of the manufacturing dates are encoded.
Okay.
So as a novice, just get an AC unit guy. Get a guy to come out and check it out. It's going to cost $60.
Or if you're an investigator like me, look up the brand, throw in the code online, and I'm sure
you can. A lot of them say, hey, this model was built between 1995 and 1997, and take the older of the two dates. If the seller can't prove it, then go with the oldest.
Okay, perfect.
So, but you definitely want to do that. AC units, 10 years, give or take. That is the expected lifespan of an AC unit. So,
and because technology has changed there, you just can't really keep fixing them. Eventually, you've got to get the whole new system, which $8,000, $10,000 per unit?
On average for a novice, yeah. I try to, if it's a small house, I'm usually getting them around $4,500 installed.
Okay.
But you buy a house that's got 2 units on it,
okay,
and you get, nicer houses, you got to put a little bit nicer unit, I've spent $20,000 on 2 units in a house before. Okay. So you just got to definitely make sure you know what you're getting.
Perfect.
And same thing when you're talking about, hey, fixing the AC unit. I mean, I like to just replace stuff. I mean, if it's newer, within that 8-year time frame, I'm gonna fix, right?
Okay.
I'm spending $500-600. If this is for my rentals, by the way,
Right.
this is not for a flip. I
Right.
always just try to repair on a flip, unless it's a 15-year-old unit. But on my rentals, if it's old and I'm looking out there and they're like, hey, we can fix this, it's gonna be $450. I buy a new one. I put a new one on, and so I don't have to deal with it for the next 10 years.
Right.
It's warranted, done. It just takes that headache out of it. Your clients will like love you, your tenants, because
less phone calls and less,
Right.
I'm hot and, we're in
their
we're in
electrical
Arizona,
bill drops.
right?
Arizona,
Sure.
it's like huge, right? So, and I actually, just on a side note, I always check the attic when I'm buying a house, because we're in Arizona. I look for insulation too.
Okay.
And I actually use that to help increase rents. Hey, this has a brand new AC unit, 2019 AC unit with 1.5 feet of extra insulation in the attic. From when I purchased it, the electrical bill just dropped 40%.
Right.
Oh my gosh, Now
Okay.
someone is paying $800 a month and is used to spending $200 in electric in Arizona.
Right.
Now they're spending $150.
Right.
$50 is a lot of money to that town.
Now AC is expensive for us, but for a lot of the country, the heaters are on
Right.
the whole time, right? And you want that insulation for those heaters too.
Right.
Perfect. Let's go into a little bit about, something that's maybe a little bit tougher. And for me is the electrical. I mean, it's always behind the walls, you can see the fixtures. Tell me a little bit about what you look at on the electrical side of things.
So there's a couple things. The big thing is the panel. So again, I'm in an area. I like new houses, but I purchase a lot of old houses too.
So what's the oldest house you've ever purchased?
1942.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
It's
a
pretty
lot.
old here in Arizona.
Yeah, that's a lot different. Analyzing it is a lot different than a new one, obviously.
Oh
right?
yeah, foundations are built differently
Right.
then. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
100%. But when you're looking at electrical, especially and this really is in regards to older properties,
Okay.
you got to open the panel, you got to pull the cover so you can see the breakers and see the wires behind it. What you're looking for is aluminum wiring, and aluminum wiring. There's some lenders that won't even lend on a house if it has aluminum wiring.
Now, is that a different color wiring, or is there a way you can tell it's aluminum by just looking at it?
It is. It looks like aluminum, like
Okay.
a soda can, right?
Okay.
Your Diet Coke, whatever
Okay.
kind of color
Okay.
can. So you're looking for that, and it's not that it's bad, but it has caused enough fires to where some lenders won't deal with it, right? And if you have to rewire a house, that can be that's pricey.
Okay.
I have one right now. I purchased it knowing it needed everything, literally everything on this list. Not foundations, everything else.
Right.
But I put that into my price. But anyway, this house is an $8,000 rewire, right?
Wow.
1,600 square
Okay.
feet. That's with, a trade that I get discounts on. So,
Right.
right. So it may cost someone else a little bit more. It's, again, a 1,600 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, living room, kitchen, redoing everything.
What else I see on electrical, and you're the expert here, but I also see kind of the do-it-yourselfers and like the double tappers.
Yep.
Can you, and some people out there might be listening, a double tapper. What's a double tapper? Explain to me what a double tapper is.
So same thing. When you have that panel open and the cover off,
Okay.
a double tap is when you have 2 wires going into that breaker, right?
Okay.
Each breaker should have 1 wire going to one location into that breaker. A double tap is 100% against code pretty much anywhere in the nation.
Okay.
Because it can overload and then create a fire, right?
Okay.
You also see in the older houses, you'll have outlets that don't have your third, your ground. That's the ground is what
right.
it is. But if it doesn't have 3 holes, right?
Right.
That's an old unit, so it doesn't have a ground wire. The other thing is to get your head up in the attic, especially on older homes. People will splice into the wiring up top, and they leave it open. They use wire nuts. They don't conceal it into junction boxes, which again, there's a fire hazard. And if
So we see someone who wants to put a new ceiling fan into one of the bedrooms, right? And so they want to come in and splice into the wires in the ceiling, And that's usually where we see the do-it-yourselfers kind of
Right.
just not wanting to pay a lot of money. They go down to Home Depot, climb up in the attic themselves. And there's nothing wrong if you do it right? But you got
Right.
but you got to do it right. You don't want to buy a home, because in a lot of, jurisdictions or counties or cities, they're going to make you rewire a home if they don't have 3 prongs if you do so much renovation. And, they're not going to let you get away with that non-ground anymore.
Correct.
Right. So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
comes your $8,000 rewire. So,
Right.
So important. All right. Anything else on electrical I didn't think of before we move on to plumbing?
No, that's probably
That's what
good.
you look for. Okay. On plumbing side.
Plumbing's a little harder
Okay.
to know, because you're really looking for there was bad plastic that was used in the 80s that has basically those houses, and I forget the name of it right now, but that was used for plumbing that basically always breaks. So
Is that the polyurethane? Is that?
it's not
No,
that.
it's
It's
not
not
that?
that, but
Okay.
it's something like
I'm-
that. If
okay.
you Google 80s bad plumbing, it's gonna pop up.
Okay.
But it becomes brittle. It breaks.
Can you
multiple
believe there's
times.
something that you and I both can't remember? I mean, that's crazy right there. Okay. But I'm looking that up right when we get off this podcast, because
Oh,
that
for
kind
sure.
of stuff drives me crazy. So anyways, in the 80s, there was some type of pipe there that just kind of disintegrates after so long.
Yep. And so you have that, and that's newer properties. A lot of people might think, well, hey, this is an 86. That's not a big deal.
Right.
Plumbing, electric, all that stuff should be good, right?
Right.
But that's not necessarily the case. And again, if you have a good, cheap contractor, plumber, like that's going to be a $5,000 job on, and that's the cheap side, right? The other things when you get into old houses, it's cast iron. So that can be expensive from the street to the house, your main line, because you're responsible for that in most situations. And then that also goes under the house, under the slab. Easily can be $18,000-$19,000. If you have any type of slow drainage, is what you're looking for. Just get a plumber out there that has the cameras that can drop them down and actually inspect those pipes, because that's very expensive when you get to the draining side of things.
Yeah, I bought a house over off of Broadway, and that's exactly what happened. That the sewer just absolutely
main.
collapsed, the water main. And here comes the big tractors and dig up the front yard and replace the landscaping, and what a nightmare. Hard to do, but they've got the cameras now that we can go down
Yeah.
and look at. What do fixtures tell you when you're looking at fixtures?
The actual plumbing fixtures, I do always look under anything where there's water. I'm looking for any type of leakage, right? So I'm looking for water stains. I'm looking for the cabinets where you probably have all seen them, where the cabinet bottom is literally warped into a bowl almost because it's been leaking for so long and no one's done anything. You can see the same thing on the fixtures itself.
The fixtures really don't matter because we're just going to replace those anyways, right?
Right.
But it's what's around the fixtures. What's happening
your
around the
drywall.
fixtures, right?
Right, all your drywall at the base where it's meeting the floor. If you see leakage by your showers, by your tubs, all that stuff is behind walls. And if you have a continuing leak behind a wall, you have black mold, which is now gets expensive again, right? So you're looking for that, and if you see a drywall or something that looks like it's water damaged, push on it. Get your finger down there, push on it. Is it soft? Does it move easy right now? It's still active, right?
Right.
If it's dried out and it's pretty kind of solid, it's probably been fixed, or the house has been sitting for a long time with no water, one of the two, right? But the drywall hasn't been fixed. So if you see something, do not be afraid to go poke it. Look at it.
Right.
Turn on the water. What's happening? Look at all those things. Same thing, hot water heater. Check that out. How old is it? Those are the same thing, about the same as a AC unit, right? 10 years. They look awesome until they don't,
Right.
right? I've purchased old houses where the hot water heater's on the outside of the house, back of the house.
Right.
rusted, crazy. I go look at it, I'm like, man, that thing's got to be 50 years old. I look at it, it's 2 years old. It's just been outside.
Right.
So the outside looks horrible. And I've been in other houses that the thing looks like it's 6 months old, and I look at it and it's like 15 years old. I'm like, holy smokes, man, we're going to have to put a hot water heater in this.
Right. And, this doesn't always happen, but there are times where your hot water heater is going to leak. And it seems like later on in the building, say in the 80s and 90s, they start saying, well, maybe we should put a pan underneath it that actually drains, so if it leaks, it doesn't flood the whole house. So I'm just going to tell you, if you're replacing a water heater, take the extra time to give it some plumbing, that if it does leak, it doesn't flood the house. Because there are some homes, 60s, 70s, 80s, when that water heater goes, you're calling your insurance company.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the new standard is supposed to be like 1.5 feet off the ground, have a pan with the drain all the way to the exterior of the house.
Right. But we're buying homes that.
Right. As a landlord, unless I'm replacing that whole hot water heater, I'm not going to spend the money. I'm just going to make sure it's not going to flood into the house. Right.
Gotcha.
So I would probably, throw a pan under it, have my handyman guy, hey, go put a pan under that. Just make sure it gets outside.
Exactly.
I don't want to have to replace that, have the downtime, no renters.
Now, a lot of people think, well, foundation would be easy to tell, right? I mean, there are either cracks in the maybe tile, maybe cracks on the wall or on the ceiling. But sometimes naturally in different areas of the country, homes settle, right? And there's a difference between a home settling and a foundation issue. Can you kind of help us decide as we're walking through a house, what? Is it a gut feeling? Is it go get some professional help? Is it over a certain, size crack?
It's a little of both. So there's definitely a lot of settling. So we have cracks in the drywall, the doors aren't aligning right. All your doors are jamming. We try to shut them. They all rub, those types of things. That's usually settling. What I try to do is drag my feet together. I'm from Florida, so you drag your feet to make sure you don't step on stingrays. You do the same thing.
A little cook shuffle there.
That's right. So if you wanted to, if I feel like I'm walking through a room, I'm seeing some of this stuff, I'm looking real close at the floor to see if I can feel an elevation change or a slope in the floor. So that's really, if from the other telltale signs, to see if it's a foundation issue. Try to look for lines. I was in a house the other day that I did buy. The whole corner sunk about 1.5 inches, and the house actually kind of stayed up. So you had the baseboard ran along, and you could actually just see it drop. So that was, to me, that was like, hey, there's something wrong with the foundation. How bad is it? So I have a guy that comes out that's a foundation expert, comes and says, yeah, it wasn't actually that bad. We can fix it up. It's going to be $2,300.
Concrete foundation?
Concrete.
Wood foundation? Concrete foundation. Okay.
Yeah, wood is really old, but we do get those sometimes here.
They're actually easier to fix, though, too, in a way. If you get to just rebuild that floor.
Jack it up.
Right. Absolutely.
Put some pillars down.
Perfect. Well, Derek, you're looking at homes all the time. How many homes do you say you buy and flip a year?
Last year I ended about 37,
okay,
and trying to increase to about 50.
That you're actually purchasing? I
actually take down in my name. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. But to get 37 or 50, how many are you looking at?
That is a great question. 300.
Okay. So if you're listening to this podcast, don't fall in love with every single house that you walk in the front door. You will get yourself in a ton of trouble. And actually, we're going to do another podcast talking about actually purchasing a home. So look forward to that with you too. But guys, here is someone who is looking at 300 houses a year, buying 30 to 60 houses. I'm not to that level. Would love to be, but I have a lot of other things going on in my life. You might be just going to try to buy your very first home. And I think these 5 things that Derek has shared with us it'll just, floor plans are nice. Location is nice. Those are things that you absolutely look at. We're not saying don't look at that, but these are things that could really hurt you in a purchase. So take some notes. When you look at some homes, go through these 5 things. If it passes those 5 things, now move on to, okay, great. There's some other things to look at, floor plan, different things. But these are the first 5 things that you really should be focusing on, because these are the things that would really hurt you. Derek, I really appreciate it.
And I just want to add, on a flipping space, or if you have cash, these things are awesome to purchase if you know what you're buying and you can get the discount, right? So I know that if all of these things are bad, right, I'm going to be spending another $40,000 on top of whatever that house is that I think I can sell it for. So I need to discount it at least that. And in a retail world, maybe that 40 is really 60. And if the seller knows that's, hey, you got 60 grand worth of fix up that's zero value before we even get into the interior, sometimes that works towards your favor, and you can buy a $250,000 house for 150 grand. Right.
And that's what I love about We Buy Ugly Houses branding, is because there's a lot of people that first of all say, I don't have 60 grand to do this. Right. I don't want to do this. And I understand that someone has to do it because comps aren't going to go up crazy on my house. And so that allows you guys to be complete experts. And I really appreciate you coming and sharing your expertise, because our clients in Rent Nation might have 1 to 10 homes. We're not the mass flippers. We're not the big landlords, And so to have someone of your caliber to come share this with us, my fear is someone says, okay, I'm going to get into the investment game. I'm going to buy my first property, but they don't go through these 5 things. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're buried in a property $20,000, and they're saying, well, David told me this was the best business in the world, and now I'm in total debt in my first property. And so this is so valuable to know. Derek, I certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate your time. And we're good friends, and I hope you'll come back and we can talk about many, many things in the investment and entrepreneurial world. Thank you so much. Guys,
thanks for having me.
No problem. Just remember these 5 things when you head out and look at your properties. And until next time, continue to rent perfect.